Welcome back to this is part two, and I'm really tired. I just want to do this part anyway, because part one, where I left off, let me see where alright, so this and this is not anything. They talk about the privacy of the video on the video, and I'm going to get to now this is the end, and you guys can see why I'm part two. Part two is where it's really extremely intense and just went to his and he started working at his own station for the living space. So when he left, she was like, I was like, I was like, what? And she was like, he's actually. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, he's definitely wasted. I was like, fine, because about me, I'll take you into my life. She was like, no. She was like, I see the way that he was saying. And then there's another lady that was not home who was a little bit like a little bit like a still probably in her like late fifties. And then she was like, I agree with that. He definitely didn't do it. She was like, hold it up, look at each other. Like, when he was with you, he was trying to like, really, really like you. And I was just like, then I kind of got like weird, like feeling like, I don't think that that's the case. Like, it's not like that, you know? It's not like that. Anyway, I didn't know that his music, I think it's amazing. So then, I don't know this part, and this is, not anything. And they talk about the private people, the city on the border, and I'm going to get to, now this is the end, and I'm going to see why, and I'm part two. Part two is, both of the ladies that, were sitting on the other end, like next to me, of the desk, swore up and down, he likes you. They kept talking about how we see the way he looks at you, all that stuff. And I'm just like, there's no way. But anyway, so we ended up later on that day. Um, it's lunchtime, and he was like, "What are you doing for lunchtime?" And I was just like, "I'm just gonna probably go downstairs and get something to eat or whatever." Um, and my normal thing, smoke my cigarette. So he was like, "Oh, okay." And so that's what I ended up doing, going down for lunch to the cafeteria, and I had a whole nice full lunch or whatever. And then went back upstairs after I smoked my cigarette. And then the end of the day comes, and he was like, "Do you mind giving me a ride?" So I was like, "No. I don't have anything to do after work." Um, and I really didn't like going home because at the point in time I was still living with my ex, and I just can't. I hated going home. We didn't talk for our, I slept on the couch in the living room for like 2 years, literally, no joke, swear to God. And we didn't talk. I wouldn't go home until probably, I used to get out of work at 5, I think, around there, and then um, I literally didn't go home. I would just, I would go home, but I would go home. He would have a routine of going to bed. This is Max at 8 o'clock every night because he used to get up for work at like 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning. So I would make sure that I didn't come home until he was asleep. So I'd go home like maybe an hour or two later. It sucked because I was always tired, but it was worth it to me because I didn't have to deal with him. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want him to see me. And it sucked only because I wanted to be able to spend more time with my German Shepherd puppy. But anyway, so that night, particular after work, I told him I'd give him a ride home. So he gets in the car. I'm in the car, and it was freezing outside. Mind, it was still December, or it might have been January by then. So on the way home, well, on the way to drop him off, he asked me to stop, like in a parking lot in another building. So I was like, okay. So I stopped in another building, and it was just empty. Everyone was gone. So we just pulled into this one parking space, and whenever I'm driving, I always like to listen to my music. So I listen to my music, and I'm like, I hope you don't mind what I'm listening to, because a lot of people that I know don't really like the kind of music I listen to. And I was like, this isn't all I listen to, but this is the majority of what I listen to. So, and he's like, oh no, maybe I might like it. Put it on. So I put it in, and in that car I had a DVD player, and or not DVD player, CD player. Had a CD player in there. So I put on this album by, I'm just gonna look up the title of the album. But anyway, let's see, full album. This one was called, it's by Slipknot. And I think the album was, I think it was Wait and Bleed. Yeah, Wait and Bleed. That was the title of the album. Or no. Well, that's not the whole album. I don't want to play it, but I want you to know the name of the song, so I'm gonna see what else was on here. Anyway, I can't believe I forgot the name of the song. Anyway, I'm gonna spend too much time looking it up, but anyway, it's kind of like a rock song or whatever. And I used to love the whole entire album, every single song on there, and have every single one memorized. But there was one song on there in particular that I listened to like over and over again. What was it called? Anyway, Snuff. I think it's Snuff. That's the one. And if you listen to that, you will understand the lyrics. Yeah, it's Snuff. Snuff. And I will listen to that song all the time. So I had that on, and then I'm not sure it was that song. Yeah, I was like, I put it on. I was like, there's a song on here that I really like, and I kind of felt like he probably think I was weird or something like that because I mean, even pretty much for a lot of people, that's not really well, a lot of people that I know anyway. That's not really something that a lot of people I know listen to, and he, I didn't think was any exception. So what I did is I put it on, and he just looked at me kind of weird. And I was like, I mean, I can take it out, I can put something else on, or just turn it off or whatever. And he's like, no. And then he was like, all of a sudden in a daze, like a long, extremely quiet, just daze, right? And I was like, are you okay? Like, is there anything wrong? And he just sat there and just stared into space. So I'm like, okay, after playing, he ended up playing, after the song played, he ended up playing it again. And then he played it again. And then he went to the part of the song where it says, I still press your letters to my lips, and cherish them in parts of me that savor ever kiss. And then, I couldn't face a life without your light. Come away with innocence. Oh no, but all that was ripped apart. When you refused to fight. So anyway, that verse, he kept playing that over and over again, and then I was just like, okay. So I ended up turning it off because it was just getting too distracting. But so anyway, we were just talking, and he asked me about like whatever relationship, all that stuff, relationship stuff, and all that specific details. So I told him everything, and then I told him I was kind of like, I was really at that point in time, I was really depressed, and really depressed. And I was just telling him like I felt depressed because of like my situation I was going through. Not that I wanted the dude, because I didn't want the dude. I had already made plans to, I was already looking for somewhere else to go already. But it was just the whole situation. I gotta pack up, I gotta move, I gotta get my dog, you know what I mean? It was just really stressful. I was depressed because I was supposed to be obviously a forever relationship, but it wasn't. So I was just like, oh, here I go, I gotta start all over again, or whatever. And I just was, I was just like not looking forward to going through all that. And I would just think about it every day was a drive. I lived an hour away, and that's if traffic was flowing smoothly. So I commuted 1 hour one way and an hour back. So that sucked too. And then another thing is that it was so crappy. It was winter. It was cold. It was just, I hate driving in the snow. Panic. Whenever I have to drive in the snow. In that car that I had, and it was just, everything was just always in my head. So I just, talked to him about it. Even though all that stuff was in my head, though, I was still like, still my happy, normal self outside of being there with, my ex. Everything else was just like, I was happy all the time and cheerful. So people didn't really know of my depression. I didn't talk to anyone about it until him and I started talking. I kind of spilled my guts about it, and I think it's just because I don't know. I just wanted to know how I was feeling since we were talking about like relationships and what was going on and blah blah blah. I just came out and told him everything. I didn't hide anything, and I wouldn't do that anyway. But so then he started telling me about how he was depressed and that he was going through a lot emotionally. And I was asking him, like, what is, what's wrong? And how come you're depressed? And he was just telling me that he um, had lost his mom, like, a, probably a little more than a year before that time frame when we met. And then he also lost his brother. And I was like, wow. And his brother was like really young. I think he was like under 20 years old. So I was like, wow. And I asked him what his mom died from. He told me she died from cancer. And I was like, wow, because in 2000, well, let me see. Right before then, probably around the same time as that, my mom passed away from the same thing. So I was like, oh my God, like I understand that part. I can't understand how it feels to lose a sibling because I hadn't gone through that part, but I did go through losing my mother, which was very hard. And I was like, wow. But his mom and his brother died like literally back to back. His brother died of a sudden death, and he was really young, so he was really depressed. So now I kind of understood a little bit more about why he was in a daze. Like it kind of made more sense to me. At the same time, I was just like, now I'm like even more, not really more depressed, but I more was in a fog because I could understand where he was coming from. Um, it gets way crazier than this though. So we talked probably for maybe a couple hours, and he ended up wanting to, be dropped off right away after we talked for a couple hours. So I was like, okay, drops him off, and this time I kind of felt a little bit different because now I got like this raw, really like personal information about him and what he's going through, and I divulged, some information about me too. So it was like, okay, now it's kind of feeling really personal, like, you know what I mean, like not just casual, hi, how are you, you know what I mean. So anyway, next day comes, he didn't show up for work at all. And then, I mean, I noticed it because we worked together all the time. Or when he went back to his station, he would come over and want to go out to lunch or want to, you know, just give me something or whatever. So I wasn't worried or anything like that. I just, you know, I didn't even really know what to think. But um, then the workday comes and goes. Next day comes, goes. He's not there. No design. So now the thing is, if you're calling out when you're temporary, I mean, you have to be like legitimately called out, or you could be terminated.
And after like a few 3 days, I think I don't remember what the policy was, but they just terminate you. So, um, any job punctuality is important, blah blah blah. But he didn't show up again, and I'm like, wow. So I didn't know. When he does come in finally on the third day later, he he looked physically like his appearance was different. His clothes were different. Well, they were not different. They were the same clothes. So I'm saying like the way he dressed, he wore the same exact clothes. The day that I had seen him last, that he came to our class, he had the same exact clothes on, the same everything, shoes, clothes. I mean pants, everything, same shirt, and I still talk to him. I mean he wasn't, whatever. So then, like the next day, he wore the same clothes again and the same everything again. I didn't really think anything of it, but I'm like, I mean, that's kind of weird. Like, you know what I mean? Didn't say anything. We still talked. We still, hung out. Um, this time though, we did end up talking, but he told me that his situation was that he was living with his dad. Because even though he's from New York City, he went to his other like long-term residence, and that's how he ended up with his dad. Because what happened is he ended up he lived in California for a lengthy period of time, and then he ended up having to move back here. He wouldn't tell me why. He just kept saying, I messed up really bad, and my family hates me, and all these like things. So at this point in time, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, thinking like messed up really bad, like meaning what? Like meaning like did you do anything like messed up to like a kid or something? Or did you rape anybody? Like I was just asking because I'm like, how would your family possibly hate you? I understand like people don't get along or you don't love it, you know what I mean, because of certain serious reasons, but not like he seemed like first of all he was going through the depression of losing his brother in such a close period of time, and I just couldn't understand like how could your family hate you? Like you're like, oh my father hates me. He told me well, he said something significant, but I don't remember what it was. Something like, he's a failure and blah blah blah. And I was like, well, why would he say that? And he's like, oh, he's right and blah blah blah. And I was like, that's not right. It's not right. You know, I mean, don't listen to that. And he would go into his days, like he would just literally just stare off into space for like long periods of time. That is what would get me like, what the frick is wrong with this dude? So I kind of didn't want to really talk to him anymore because he was just such a daze all the time. And I mean, I was depressed too, but I didn't understand that depth of depression at that point in time. So, I mean, I did, but I didn't in the sense that he was saying like his family hated him, so he's become pretty depressed about that. He has a twin sister, which he told me, and even his twin couldn't stand him anymore. And I was like, what? You had to be, there's something wrong. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I got to the point where I wanted to reach out to his dad and talk to him and tell him, like, your son is really depressed. Like, you need to, like, love him and embrace him and help him through it because he's really depressed. Like, he would literally be in a daze just randomly and just sit there and stare into nothingness. Um, anyway, he ended up coming to work again, but he started to come to work late or miss work, and it started to be consistent. That's what he was doing. Um, Before he started like on the cycle of being late and all that stuff, one day he asked me for my phone number, so I gave it to him, and it was, I mean, it was kind of like, I wouldn't say it's exciting, but it was kind of weird because then it got more and more weird, where he told me that he had, his quote unquote words was, I have an Obama phone. And I didn't know what the frick that was. And apparently it was a phone that was free and he had a certain amount of minutes on it. That's why he told me, like, he could talk, but not really long. He had a certain amount of minutes he could talk on it, whatever. So anyway, one day he texted me, and it was on the day that we didn't have work, like a weekend or whatever. And he just texted me, hey, how are you, blah, blah, blah. So I just, responded, I'm good, blah, blah, blah. And he told me, um, I just got off the phone with my family in California. And I was like, oh, great. And then he's like, yeah, it was a really nice conversation. We had a conference call with my family members, my sisters, and whoever else. And I was like, that's really good. So he was really excited and happy about that. And I was happy for him about that. He seemed to be more relieved. Like, his personality was better after that. And then work resumed, and like, the following week. And he ended up coming in, and he had different clothes on, but he was like, I don't know. They just didn't look like he just came out of the shower freshly or anything like that. Anyway, he asked me for a ride home again, so I gave him a ride. But this time, he told me to drop him off. He had to go like really quickly because he had a curfew to be in by. Because he was living in a shelter, a homeless shelter. And I was like, why am I dropping you off? Are you meeting your dad here or something like that? Because his dad didn't live too far from there. Like, his dad's place was pretty much in walking distance of the shelter. So I was like, is your dad going to pick you up here? And he was like, no, I'm staying here. So, I mean, I really didn't know what to say. But he had to go anyway, so we couldn't talk because he had to be in or else he wouldn't have anywhere to sleep. That's what he told me. So I was just like, okay. Dropped him off. I felt really, really messed up. And I couldn't even do anything about it because I wasn't living in my own house. I was living in my ex. Um, and I felt terrible. Like, so what I ended up doing is I ended up going, after I dropped him off, to a store, and I bought, I didn't know what the heck he used or anything like that, but I bought him, I went to the mall and I bought him some shirts. Like, he was a big, huge, he wasn't overweight or anything like that, but he was really tall and he was really like muscular or whatever you want to call it. But so I ended up buying him some shirts, um, some, I don't know if I bought him pants. I bought him like everything you possibly think of: socks, underwear, shirts, and then I went to another place and got him some deodorant, some shower gel, I'm trying to think what else did I buy him. I don't know if I bought it. Oh, I think deodorant, shower gel. I know I got him toothbrush with like a toothbrush holder thing. Just some basic essentials that I thought he might be able to use. And when I saw him next, I mean, I kept it in the car because obviously I didn't want to give it to him at work. So I'm thinking to myself this whole time that that's probably why he's been late because, you know, I mean, he's staying there. Maybe he doesn't have like a way to get on an alarm clock, or I don't know how, what was going on or how that worked. But I was starting to think to myself, like, maybe that's why he wasn't coming to work like that, because he was going through that. So I started to feel really bad. And then other people at work didn't really notice. And what was wrong, like that things are really wrong with him, that he was depressed, because he was always quiet with them anyway. So for me, I'm carrying this in my heart, in my mind, and I was just feeling really bad. Always thinking about how he was depressed, and it was really weighing on me. Um, so he finally comes in, and he had the same stuff on again, and this time he kind of like it smelled like a little bit like he was, like sweaty, and he hadn't had a shower. Then again, understandably, like that he wouldn't want to take a shower there because you don't know who the heck is up in them places. So I told him that like I have some stuff to give him, and he's just like, "What is it?" And I was just like, "Well, I'll wait until, later." And then he's like, "Okay." So end of the workday, we go in to my car, and this time he asked me if I can bring him to this park. Like, it's not too far from where the shelter was. I dropped him off there, and I gave him the stuff, and he was like, "Wow, why did you do all this?" He's looking at all the clothes, he's looking at the, personal things that I bought him. And I was like, I mean, I figured, you might be able to use them. I mean, if you can't use them, let me know. I mean, I hope you're not offended or anything like that. I just wanted to give you some things like that I thought you could use. And he's like, "No, I mean, it's just, I can't believe you did all this for me." So, I didn't want him to make it a big deal. I just wanted him to have the things. So, that was that. He put him in a bag. He had a bag with him, like a plastic garbage bag, or not garbage bag, but like a whatever shopping bag. So, he ends up putting his things in there. And then he tells me about how he hopes nobody steals them, and, he doesn't know where to put everything. And at that point, I didn't really know what to do, but because I couldn't really do anything. I didn't know what I could do about that, but I just worried like about him. And then like the next day we go back, and he seemed like he was in way better spirits. So we're talking, blah blah blah, and then he's asking me about like where am I gonna move to and all that stuff, and I'm like, I don't know yet. I'm telling him we're in the process, and about my dog, and I'm still looking. And he goes, "What do you think about having a roommate?" And I was like, I don't really do like roommate situations because I don't. And I don't like that. Now the family, not with anyone. I'm just not used to that. So I ended up telling him that, I mean, I don't know, maybe it would be okay. And but we, I don't know. I just kind of like really didn't want to give it any kind of consideration because I kind of felt like, I mean, that was gonna be kind of awkward. I don't know this dude, but then again, we kind of talked how it would be and all that stuff, and he seemed like his whole personality, his whole spirit just lit up. He felt like way better. So he's like, well, I'm saving up, to get a place, and I'm gonna be looking too. And he was like, would you want to get 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms? I said definitely 2 or 3 because I always need an office at home. So, um, and he's like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna start looking for some 3 bedrooms. And I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't think anything of it, but I don't know. I was just thinking, like, why would he be doing that? Anyway, so he payday rolls around, right? And he's like, I got this, this huge check, and what I'm gonna do instead of going to the shelter, would you be able to take me to whatever the name of the hotel was? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I took him down there. He bought like the hotel room for like a week or two. I think it was a week initially. And we bought the room. He had me go there with him drop off, to bring him away from. So I did that. And then after I did that, he wanted me to go in the room. And mind you, I'm wearing like professional. Well, I don't know. I usually wear like really short skirts to work, just because I feel more comfortable in them, and high heels and whatever. Always dress like that. So, um, he asked me to come in the room. I went in the room with him, and I was just standing there, like he was talking about whatever, and then I kind of liked him though. He was so fucking fine. Like he was really nice looking, but I don't know. It was just hard to figure out because he wouldn't tell me like specific things about what was going on with his family and himself. He's very secretive, and I just was really worried about that. Well, what he did is he ended up telling me that he ended up telling me that he's like, he's like, do you want to come over here and sit on the bed? And I was like, no, I didn't want to. I didn't. At that point in time, I felt really uncomfortable because there's only one way out of there, and unless I'm climbing out the or jumping out the window, but I'm literally thinking like I'd have to break this glass. Like it's really going through my mind. And He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick." He went pee real quick. He came back out. While he was in there, I was thinking, "Oh my god, I'm gonna leave." But he came back really quick. So I was like, anyway, I didn't really want to leave him there, but with no explanation. But I just didn't feel comfortable. He asked me, "Do I want to sit in the bed?" And I said no. And he's like, "Can I give you a hug?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure." He gave me a hug, and then he was like, sorry about that. But he gave me a hug, and then he was like, here's a little bit weird. He gave me a hug, and when I hugged him, he was hugging me like he didn't want to let go. And then I was just like, okay, that's enough. And then he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I mean, which I was fine, but I was like scared. I didn't want to tell him I'm scared. I just like, "Yeah, I'm okay," because I was okay, but I just didn't want to be in that room anymore at that point in time. So he pulls me down on his lap, and I was like, don't, I don't want to sit down on your lap. And then he's like, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna do anything to you." Blah blah blah. And I was just kind of caught in the moment, like I don't know what to do. Um, so I ended up telling him, all right, this is enough. And he's like, all right, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Um, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go, and I'll see you tomorrow. So he was like, okay. The hotel I brought him to was literally walking distance of our job if he wanted to. So I was kind of feeling relieved about that. Like he didn't have to worry about how long it's gonna take him to get to work, and he had some money, so he could, worst case scenario, like hop in a cab or something like that. Um, he texted me that night later on to tell me thank you for everything and good night and blah blah. So I was like, okay. Next day, I get to work, and sitting at my workstation, he's back in his old workstation, and he's watching me. Like he wouldn't see me from his workstation, but like he would get up, he would go out of the office, and he had to pass me in order to do that. So he did that a few times, and then came back in, and he walks over to me because he had to sign back in. He walks over to me and he goes, um, "Do you want anything to eat or drink?" And I was like, "Oh no, thank you." So then comes around to where it's break time, and he goes out. I'm still sitting there, and he comes back in with water, Dasani water, and he comes in with chip or whatever the little Cheeto things or whatever I used to like. And I was like, what? He just tapped me on my shoulder, and he was like quiet like that. He taps me on my shoulder, and he hands it to me. My the ladies on the other end are looking because they're nosy. They were nice, but they were just nosy when it came to that. So he look it out. Came over and he's like has me on my shoulder. I looked up. He handed me those things, and I was like, "Wow, thank you so much." And then he goes, do you want to like hang out for lunch?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure." We went out for lunch, and then at the end of the day, he's like, "Do you want to drop me off or I was like, yeah, sure. So I drop him off, get back to the hotel, and then he invited me to go in. And I went in, and um, he sat, or he stood over by there was a desk in there. He stood over by the desk, and I'm standing like towards the door, between the door and the bed. And he's like, oh, you want to sit down? And I was like, no. He's talking about whatever. And then, so we're kind of conversating back and forth. All of a sudden, he comes and he says to me, can I have a hug? And I was like, okay. Gave him a hug. He was nice and clean. He was dressed nice. And he had gotten his hair cut. He was in way better spirits. And I was really happy about that. He smelled really good. And he had some nice clean clothes on. Like it was normal. You know, he started feeling himself. So I gave him a hug anyway. And he took my hand after we finished hugging. Took my hands, and he was like, he looked at me in my eyes, like really deep and really serious. I was like, yeah. And he goes, I want to tell you something, but I don't want to get you scared or anything like that. And I was like, what? What is it? He says, I want you to be mine. I'm like, what? I want you to be my girl. And at that point in time, I was like, I'm not really blushing because Anne's confused and like kind of nervous. And he's like, no, seriously, like, I want you to take care of me. I want to take care of you. And I just want to be just us. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, like, I want us to cook together. I want us to just cuddle and lay in bed on our days off and just be together. I want you to always be with me. And I always want to be with you. And I was just like, what? In my head, I'm like, he's like, will you tell me, like, you'll be mine? And I'm nervous and I'm scared, but he's so freaking fine. He's tall. He's beautiful. He's a beautiful. He could be a model. Like that's what I was thinking. Um, I'm thinking like, okay. So I was like, I don't know. I have to think about it. And all of a sudden he kissed me. And I'm like, he kisses me like big time. And I was like, oh my God. Like my heart's pounding. I don't really get sweaty, but I was hot. I was just like, and he kissed me so good. Oh my God. It's a long, intense kiss. And I was just like, oh my God. And he's like, then he goes and sits on the bed and he grabs my hands. I'm still standing up at this point. And he kisses me again. And I was like, oh my God. So I, went for it and kissing him back. And then after that, he asked me again. He's like, will you be my girl? And I was like, okay. So I'm like really scared, kind of excited but scared at the same time. So it's just weird, you know. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave now. So I went home and get shower and change and whatever. So I did. I ended up going home, and I was just so like blown away, so like taken back by all this, and I didn't even know what to do. Anyway, the next day, he didn't come to work. No, before that, before I left, he was like, we made a plan to go to the movies. I don't remember what movie we were gonna go see, but he made a plan. We made a plan to go see a movie that Friday. It was like Wednesday, and then Thursday we planned on. He was supposed to go to work Thursday, obviously, both of us, and then Friday after work we were gonna go to the movies. So Thursday gets there, he didn't show up for work at all, and I was just kind of wondering like what happened to him. Like, is he okay? You know, all these things are going through my head. I don't remember if I texted him or not, but I don't think I did. Like, he didn't text me or call me or anything like that, so I didn't know. But I just wasn't too concerned. Friday came, he didn't show up for work. And I'm like, damn, we got a date. Like, you know, tonight we're gonna go to the movies. And he didn't show up all day. He didn't show up at all. Not late, nothing. Another no call, no show. After I get out, I drove to the hotel room. And it was really dark, so you couldn't really tell. It didn't look like anybody was there, like he was there or anything. So I got out and I knocked on the door, and he didn't answer. And the curtain was drawn, so I couldn't tell like if he was in there or whatever. So I go to the car, try to call him. I didn't get any answer. So I go back to the door, knock on it again, like really as hard as I could. And when I did, he still didn't answer. So I went back to the car, and then I had a phone call. I was in the middle of a phone call. So I was sitting in my car, and I'm on the phone, and all of a sudden, like 15 minutes after I'm on the phone, I just see the door fly open, and he's standing there, and he looked really like weird. His face looked weird, everything looked weird. So I jumped out the car, and he closed the door. I was like, what the hell is wrong with this dude? So I went back to the car, sat down. Next thing you know, the door flies open again. He comes out. He came over to the car, and he's like, oh, you want to come in? And I was like, yeah. So he's like, I'm gonna leave the door open. So I go in, and my heart's racing. He's sitting on the bed, and he's like, there was a bottle of NyQuil in the bed, and it was empty. And I was like, what's the matter? Are you sick? Do you got a cold? Like, he's like, no. I said, then what's wrong? And part 3 is coming up. You have to watch. You will not believe it.